Welcome back to the channel, guys. Now I hope you guys have been enjoying the game so far. I know from what little time I've got to play, I've definitely been enjoying the game. I've been doing a lot of different testing sort of things. This video is going to be sort of a basic overview and guide over both of these shotguns for Black Ops Cold War. And yeah, we only have two right now, which kind of sucks butt. But a few things to mention about this video. It's not a replacement for my ultimate weapon guides of Cold War. They both are going to get the attention they need and individually, but I figured right off the bat I would just do sort of an overview and go over some basic stuff that's important in my opinion, like range and damage and stuff like that. Just sort of a general comparison. It's going to be helpful, but for the super in-depth testing and combinations, that will be for my ultimate guides. And seeing as how the stats are sometimes inaccurate in the game, I still have a lot to look at. Also, just like with Modern Warfare, I will be going over weapon guides for pistols and more quirky guns and not just shotguns, so don't worry, there should be plenty of content to go over. Now onto the guns. We have the pump action known as the Hauer 77 and the Spaz 12, or how it's known in game as the Gallo SA12. I like Spaz 12 better. Shotguns in this game, as you know, are secondaries. Now what this means is naturally they're going to be weaker than what you're used to, especially coming from Modern Warfare. I mean, no more 15+ meter one-shot kills. It's strange for a lot of us, I know, but shotguns may not be as bad as you may think in the context of this game, and you'll see soon that attachments can really make these guns super nice, especially the Hauer. Now shotguns seem to do a flat damage, meaning as long as one pellet hits, you'll do a set amount of damage, and then you get a bonus based off of the pellets hit. This is what Call of Duty has done for a while now, and it helps make the shotguns a bit more consistent overall. Now the Hauer 77 deals 159 damage up close, which is enough to take down someone in one shot, and the Gallo does 118, so it takes 2 at least to kill a fully healthed player. The Hauer takes generally 1 to 2 shots to kill, and the Gallo is going to take usually 2 to 4. Notice I said generally. In some cases the Hauer can take 3 shots, I found, if you land some pretty off-target shots or use the DUCKBILL choke and just don't really aim well at all. Now it does take 3 if that's the case, however most people, and by most I mean like 95% of us, we will not take 3 shots to kill, and it's usually going to be just 2 or even 1. Even at the last bit of the Hauer's range, when you're really pushing it, as long as you aim, you're going to be getting a 2-shot kill. Now the Gallo is the same way in that you can always expect 4 shots at the most. There is an attachment we have now though that wasn't in the beta that actually changes damage for the shotguns, and yes, you heard that right. The last barrel you unlock actually increases damage overall by 45% for the Hauer and 81% for the Gallo at the cost of about 13% overall range. We'll get into that in a second. But the Gallo can actually one-shot decently with this attachment, so be ready for people to be really upset about that. First, we're going to look at the Hauer 77 and how it works and some attachments, and then we'll go over the Gallo SA12, and what you'll notice is that some of the attachments are basically copy and paste. So with the Hauer, it's usually going to take, like I said, 1 to 2 shots to kill, and is the one and done shotgun of the game. Looking at the stats, I want you to just ignore the effective damage range value at the top because I can't really tell what it's supposed to signify, and it's the same for both shotguns, which isn't right. It's not one-shot kill range or a minimum damage range, so it's probably just an error if I had to guess, but for now ignore that one. And the rest seem pretty accurate from what I can tell, but there definitely are some inconsistencies, but I'll go over that in the more detailed, in-depth individual gun guides. The rate of fire for the Hauer is pretty slow at about 66 RPM. Now here's where something gets a little weird. This rate of fire, the 66, only applies to the Hauer when you're aiming down sights. For whatever reason, aiming down sights will slow your rate of fire, and this number is shown as the 66 RPM. When you hit fire, you can fire noticeably faster at about 80 rounds per minute. I have no idea why, but I tested this a few times and it seems to be this way, so just be mindful of that when you use this gun. Now let's look at ranges and attachments. Now the base one-shot kill range is about 6.1 meters and the overall effective range is roughly 20 meters. Now the largest range increase you get is from the larger barrel, which takes it up to 7.9 meters, that's the Ranger barrel, for that one-shot kill range, and about 27 meters for that effective range. Now notice I said range, because even though the Ranger barrel does give us the most range, the Task Force barrel actually increases overall damage done by 45%, and what this does is it also increases our one-shot kill ability up to about 10 meters while decreasing the overall effective range to 18 meters. This is incredibly strong as a secondary, and this attachment was not in the beta, but this is without a doubt probably the best way to run the gun for classic shotgunning. The Ranger barrel is nice for picking off people at range and sticking back a little bit, and I think it's still really good, but that increase in overall damage makes this thing pretty nasty as a secondary, and I'm afraid as a secondary that this will be abused, or at some point it's probably going to get nerfed because so many people will probably end up complaining about it. If you want to main this gun, this barrel is really a good choice for just that. The muzzle attachments are hit or miss, with some being decent and others being just kind of bad. The duckbill choke is nice because since it's usually just 2 shots to kill, you have a wider spread, so it's a bit more forgiving up close. However, at range, firing with it is likely going to be a bad time and makes 3 shots a little more common than usual. Now, I don't recommend it for ideal builds, but it can work and it does have some place, and hey, variety is always good. The other most unique attachment here is the V-choke, which gives us an 85% boost to our pellet tightness while aimed down sights, and as you can see, it's a slug. That is a slug, but sadly, it doesn't help our range or one-shot kill ability. In fact, all this really does is make it harder for you to hit opponents because now you have to be so precise. At ranges, it can help if someone's already kind of weakened, since it helps you get more pellets on target and may kill them, whereas maybe if you nick them without it, there's a chance they may still live, but 9 times out of 10, this attachment won't really make a great difference in core game modes. Since it's usually a 2-shot kill anyway and the base spread is already decent enough, there's not really a true reason to run it in my opinion, and no, headshots don't really make a difference either. Now, the agency choke is okay, but it hurts range by more than the normal suppressor does, and it also hurts our sprint out time as well, and again, the benefits aren't really that great. It gives you better hip spread and it does keep you off the radar, but I prefer my sprint out time fast as possible and to keep my range up. If you want to stay off the radar, just use the normal suppressor since it doesn't hurt your range as much and it doesn't affect any other parts of the gun. The flash cone is unique as an attachment because it helps muzzle flash concealment, and what that means is you're not going to be suppressing sound, but your red dot on the radar only shows up for a split second as opposed to how it normally lasts for at least like 2 seconds or so. It's kind of nice and it has no downsides, but good players will still be able to keep an eye on you. Also, the SOCOM blast mitigator is the same thing, but it only has a 50% reduction in time and it hurts other parts of the gun, so it seems kind of useless to me. For body attachments, the lights are pretty unique as well, and honestly I'll probably do a whole video on just them separately, but they basically give enemies you see a red dot over their head that isn't present unless you are literally like aiming on top of them. With the flashlight, the target designator, spotlight, and ember sighting point, they all help reveal distance, and what this means is that as long as an enemy is in range, that red dot is going to show up above their head and make spotting enemies much easier in weirdly lit areas. It has this like 60-degree cone that as long as they're in that attachment's range, it'll have a red dot over their head. For each attachment, it's different, and the range is basically the percentage of the reveal distance you see in the stats, so normally it's 0. With the flashlight it's 20% or 20 meters. The target designator, which only works when you're aiming down sights, is 60% or 60 meters, so you get the gist, and it's the same for the Gallo 12, there really is no differences there. For ammunition, the Hauer only has a measly 5 shots, but it can get 6 with the tube and 8 with the Stanag attachment. The Stanag is great because it only hurts reload speed, so it's usually a go-to for me. Now for handles and stocks, the changes indicated by the attachment stats are not entirely accurate. The base printout time for the Hauer, for example, is labeled as 400 milliseconds, which is seriously slow, like incredibly slow, but when I tested it, it was more close to like 16 frames, which is about 267 milliseconds, which is much more standard. The percentages that we see which affect sprint out time are pretty close. They're not perfect, but they are generally in ballpark range, somewhat accurate enough so that when you see the stats, you can more or less make a good choice just based on those slightly incorrect numbers. When I go do my in-depth guides for them, I'll be sure to show them off there. As of now, there really is no reason to go over each individual one super in-depth, and most of you probably will just pick based on your playstyle. For example, I rush a lot, so having a super fast sprint out time is essential for me, so the no stock attachment is an important attachment, but it does hurt my hipfire accuracy. The marathon stock is also nice because of all the other movement speed bonuses you get, but it's not as quick when it comes to sprint out time, so those two stocks are my stocks of choice. The other stocks work, but they aren't as exciting, shall we say, as the no stock and marathon stock attachment. In the handles category, the flinch resistant grips do in fact reduce your visual flinch, but this isn't a precision weapon and it's definitely not one for ranges, so it's nice but it's not essential, and you probably don't need to kit out your Hauer for flinch resistance, honestly. Now speed tape for me is simple and it helps little and it has no downsides. If you use the no stock attachment, you could use the elastic wrap grip to get a really fast aim down sights time as well, but you lose roughly, again, this is not entirely accurate based off of my own testing, but about 15% of your sprint out speed instead of from the 40% reduction. But it is manageable. So for stocks and handles, I'd recommend going for mobility over anything else. Now, if you decide to use the Ranger barrel, it does take 35% of your aim walking or strafe speed while aiming down sights, so using a stock to help with that may be helpful, just so you can kind of peek around corners a little bit easier. There's lots of ways to kit out this gun's mobility, but for me as a rusher, sprint out time and aim down sights time are king above all else. For the Gallo SA12, the stats are basically identical, with the range, damage, and the fire rate being the big main differences. As I said before, the damage it deals is 118 damage up close, so it's always going to take at least 2 shots to kill a full health player. That is, until you equip the Task Force barrel, which gives it a boost of 81% damage. And you heard that right, that's 81% more damage for a spammy shotgun. It goes from dealing 118 damage up close to 214, which is more than enough to one-shot. Now for the Gallo's ranges, normally it takes 2 shots up until about 8.1 meters, and the Ranger barrel again gives us the most range. The Task Force barrel gives us, like I said, a one-shot kill, and that extends up to 5.4 meters, which is just under the Hauer's base one-shot kill range. And then the 2-shot kill range for that barrel is about 9 meters. So while this barrel does increase range and make it more deadly up close, it isn't carrying that damage further than the Ranger barrel. That being said, the Task Force barrel is not to be trifled with. This thing can Shrek people like no other. Now the only other big difference in barrels is instead of the reinforced barrel and the hammer forged barrels giving you a 5% boost to fire rate like the Hauer, the Gallo actually gets a 16% boost in rate of fire. So its base rate of fire is about 212 RPM, and that goes to about 245 rounds per minute. This is actually really nice as well, so I think that the barrels that increase your rate of fire are going to be an awesome choice, along with the Task Force barrel. Which is better kind of depends on you. Now the rate of fire will take your time to kill down and make you kill quicker and get more shots out at ranges, but the Task Force barrel can one-shot, so it's like an instant kill, and it can also two-tap people pretty decently. Personally, I prefer the Task Force since it's already a fast-firing shotgun, and I tend to stick with real close engagements with the Gallo anyway. Sadly, this is where things get a bit redundant. The body, handle, and stock attachments are identical to the Hauer, so there is no point in going over each one again, like it's literally copy and paste. The mag attachments on the Gallo take it from 7 shots up to 9 and 12, which make them essential to me, seeing as how it's a spammy shotgun. And with that, I want to leave it there for these two guns to avoid making this video way too long. Like I said, I do want to make individual guides for these as well, but I wanted to get something out quick for that launch time window so that you guys had some good indication of what to use. Thankfully, the in-game stats really do help alleviate questions you may have about building this gun, so I'm thankful for that, and as long as they're kind of accurate, it works. Generally, they seem to be ballpark from what I can tell, but I'll do a lot more testing and make sure they're pretty accurate for my individual gun guides. As far as my thoughts on each shotgun and which one I like the most, I prefer the Hauer over the Gallo as a primary, and the Gallo is more of a secondary. I'm a pump action guy, that's just what I like. Now the Hauer's one-shot kill potential is pretty nice with the right attachments, and it's just so much fun to run with this thing and get those one-shot kills. It's super satisfying. You have to play smart though and try not to push unnecessarily in bad spots. The Gallo is really reliable because of that fire rate, and while it may be weaker in some ways, the rate of fire and how simple and effective and easy it is to use can make it such a good weapon to have as a fallback on close quarters. Now normally I go over some good class setups, but because I want to do my individual gun guides for each and do more in-depth testing, and also I need to have more time with the guns and whatnot, I want to wait on doing the best classes. But in terms of the general way to use them, especially as a primary, you want to be using corners and cover to your advantage very often. And when you kit out your shotgun, make sure to increase that one-shot kill range as much as possible, or just that range in general. For me, the Task Force barrel with the damage increase is generally my go-to, and the no-stock attachment and bigger magazines are also a good staple of my class setups. And guys, that is just about going to do it for this video. Make sure to let me know in the comments down below, what do you think of the shotguns in this game, and what do you think of the game in general thus far? How are your initial impressions? Like I said, I'll be doing some more Modern Warfare guides as more stuff is released into the game, but for now, that's going to be it for this video. So I hope you guys have a wonderful day/night, and I will see you in the next video.